Welcome to everyone who just joined. Thank you for joining the session. We would like to welcome you to our second SDG Week event titled Beyond Tokenism, Youth Voices and the Quest for Real Change. My name is Stacey Garwe and I'm the Programs Associate at Professors Without Borders. And today I'll be moderating today's exciting panel discussion. Just to give you a summary of our discussion, it is a panel discussion that will delve into the topic and crucial topic of youth inclusion in the work on sustainable development goals, particularly education, and we'll explore the progression of youth representation and participation in the youth topic, which is SDG development. Thank you for everyone who just joined. It's nice to have you with us. Just to continue, so sorry. So sorry, my screen just froze a bit there. Let me just fix that. Okay, so as I was saying, in our discussion, we'll explore the progression of youth representation and participation in various countries since inception and consider whether a diluted form of inclusivity has resulted in global youth complacency in Africa and in the world over. Our panelists will share insights into the challenges faced in their national and regional contexts regarding meaningful youth inclusion in sustainable development actions. Just to let you know, please make sure that your mic is off when everyone else is speaking, and please reserve your questions to the end of the panel discussion and where we'll address them. We'd like to introduce to you Charles Hopkins, who is our keynote speaker today, and I'm so excited to have the honor to be able to introduce him to you today. Charles Hopkins holds the UNESCO chair at York University in Toronto, Canada, and he has collaborated with UNESCO, the United Nations University, higher education institutions, various ministries of education in Asia, Europe, and the Americas in the fields of education and sustainability. This is only the start of this introduction, and I hope you guys are ready for me to continue with that one. Internationally, Charles has a long relationship in education and sustainability, chairing and writing and adoption of processes of the UNESCO ESD, which is the Education for Sustainable Development Declarations, and he was also awarded in education as the education leader with several honorary doctorates and professorships. Hopkins has lectured and presented papers in approximately 75 countries, and he's the co-director of the Asia Pacific Institute on ESD in Beijing, China. He has numerous publications and has lectured worldwide in a range of topics from quality education, global citizenship, education, and educating for a sustainable future. Charles has been awarded 3 honorary doctorates and several other professorships in Europe, Latin America, and Asia. He's a fellow of the Royal Society of Arts in the United Kingdom and Salzburg Global Citizenship Alliance in Austria, and the Sejahtera Center for Humanity and Sustainability in Malaysia. Prior to his international career, Hopkins was a teacher and principal, regional superintendent, and superintendent of the curriculum with the Toronto District School Board. In addition to Charles's impressive and experience and accomplishments, I'm also excited to mention Charles's crucial engagement in the planning leading up to the Pact for the Future Summit in September, which will be happening soon. He recently addressed the crucial role of education for sustainable development in the framework for transformative societal changes needed to bring the SDGs back on track. Charles, we are so honored to have you today, and your great contributions to advancing education for sustainable development highly echo your relevance for our discussion today. I'm going to give you the floor just to open us off with your speech. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you, Stacey. Thank you so much for the kind words, and but also thank the organizers of this for giving me the opportunity to say a few words here at the beginning. I love the title, this idea beyond tokenism, youth voices and the quest for real change. I guess for so many years, the participation of youth in decision making and so on, it was largely relegated to singing at the beginning of it, at the opening and closing ceremonies, or something of that nature. But I think really by engagement, what I mean is not only listening to youth and so on, but also co-constructing knowledge, building the insight, getting the experience in the engagement skills on both sides, because it is only through ongoing engagement and being a part of it that we all develop the skills, and that skills has to be developed on both sides. The skills of us as adults who've been around a time, being able to actually engage and listen and to learn. So the importance of youth engagement, especially around the SDGs, there's several justifications of it. First of all, the idea that just by sheer numbers, 50% of the world, the average age is under 30 years.
Yep.
In Africa, it's under 20. In Africa, only 4% of the population is over 65, yet 40% is under 15. So that it's extremely important that just from social justice, through the sheer numbers, it's right. And these are the people who are going to inherit the world and its systems, the legal systems, the cultural norms. These are all being established now by older people. So it's only important that we take into mind the justice of what we're doing to you who will inherit it, and then have to try and bring about the change. But the need goes beyond just the rightness and the social justice of it all. The world really needs new perspectives, new dreams, new goals, new visions of what is success. How do we sort out the difference between needs and greeds, and what are new ideas of what is well-being? What do I really want the world to be like, and what do I want my world to be like? Now, the UN recognizes the importance of including youth. They just mentioned the Pact for the Future that's currently circulating. There are 5 chapters in that, and one is on youth and future generations, including children. And the focus of that pact is to reflection of engaging youth at the UN level, but having that reflected back on the nations, so that what is agreed upon at the UN can be agreed and practiced within our own nations. And it's hoped that there will be a declaration on future generations that's annexed to the Pact for the Future. Now, we all realize that there are a lot of issues engaged in trying to work with youth. Just listening. Countries don't conduct polls, like around voting. They don't seek the opinion of youth. It's not reported on the news and so on. It's just there. So it's up to youth to develop the skills and come forward. But there are all these issues, like who speaks for youth, just as who speaks for older adults. But at least the voice of the sort of beyond youth is often sought. The diversity of perspective of youth, how do we capture that? How to really access and pull together this collective wisdom of youth and sort of agree and bring it forward. So how do we get at these thoughtful alternatives and so on? So really, I look forward to listening to the panel because I recognize the people on the panel, and for certain, and I'm sure many of the people calling in will have wonderful ideas of how to develop the skills to get your voice out there and make it meaningful. So I look forward to this panel discussion, the ideas of those of you who are online, and thank you again for inviting me to open and be part of this opening ceremonies by saying these few words. I wish you well.
Thank you so much, Charles. That was so insightful. And I'm even learning so much from this discussion, even though I'm the moderator. Some things that I picked up are engagement. Engagement, like what we're doing right now, is essential to youth participation. And the statistics you gave of only 20, like the youth in Africa being below 20 mostly, and even in the world being below 30 is very alarming, you know, and people don't really think about that we are the majority, and we need to actually take that power back, you know, that we may have lost in the process. I think another thing that we'd like to echo as this conversation continues is the idea of capturing youth voices. What we're doing right now is capturing our voices, and we're making ourselves heard and increasing capacity building, and that's what's important in our discussion today. So we really thank you for giving us those key insights to help us build our conversation forward. Next off, I would like to start to introduce you to our exceptional panel of speakers. Today, we have got 3 speakers, and I'm going to introduce them one after the other, and they'll give us a brief intro of their work in their different areas. To start off, I'd like to introduce to you Divya Rana. Divya is an advocate for youth empowerment and sustainable development, boasting a diverse background in interdisciplinary studies and hands-on involvement in health and education. With a master's degree in development studies from the Graduate Institute of Geneva, Divya's academic journey spans continents, from a bachelor's of liberal arts in the USA to cross-cultural psychology specializations in Denmark and an IB diploma in Hong Kong. Divya has worked with various organizations in the development sector, including a think tank, CSOs, and INGOs across Asia, Europe, and North America. Her interests lie particularly in youth engagement, focusing on women's empowerment, social inclusion, intersectionality, traditional knowledge, and human-centered approaches to development. Currently serving as Governance and Human Development Program Officer at the Institute for Integrated Development Studies, IIDS, in Nepal, she leads initiatives aimed at alleviating poverty and enhancing local government capacities with a specific emphasis on youth employability, skills, and training. Divya's commitment to youth engagement and a proficiency in project management, research, and stakeholder collaboration underscore her role in reorienting education to ensure meaningful inclusion and youth participation in driving sustainable change. Thank you, Divya, for joining us today. May you please just give us a few minutes just to get to know you more in these minutes. Thank you.
Thank you, Stacey, for that introduction. I'm Divya. I'm currently in Nepal. As you said, I work at this think tank called the Institute for Integrated Development Studies. I work predominantly in 3 key areas. One is health, the other one's education, and the third one is social protection. So in social protection, we do mostly work related to labor migration issues in Nepal and South Asia. In health, we do work related to nutrition, diet, agriculture, and sociocultural notions of health, wellness, and well-being. And in education, we focus on 2 sectors. One is benchmarking for schools, all schools across Nepal, and the other one is higher education sector enhancement. So right now, our work is mostly related to local government capacity enhancement, poverty alleviation initiatives, and there's a strong emphasis of my work on youth employability, skills, and training. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I noticed that your work is very diverse. There's a lot of things going on in your organization, and that's really interesting, and I'm looking forward to exploring more of that in our discussion. Thank you for your introduction. Next, we're going to move on to Manasia in our introductions. Thank you. Manasia is one of our speakers today. And Manasia Futa was born in Luanda, Angola, where she lives currently. She is a community champion for the Central and Southern African regions at the Global Shapers community for 2 years now, and has been leading 6 hubs in different countries such as Angola, Zambia, Malawi, and Mozambique. Manasia is passionate about social work, and she graduated as a social educator at the Catholic Institute. Manasia defends the human rights for women and young people in Africa and around the world. And she believes in the impact of working in a multidisciplinary team and contributing to government strategies. Manasia also believes in sharing her knowledge with her peers in social work as she is studying a social service degree at the Catholic University. And all this knowledge will be added to the community projects. Thank you for joining us today, Manasia. Please, may you just give us a bit more information about who you are and your work. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Stacey, and it's a pleasure to be here around Mr. Charles, Renchillina, and Divya. And also, I want to say thank you to Professionals Without Borders for this opportunity to be speaking on behalf of African young people and also between Global Shapers community. As a community champion and social educator, it's always I look for the way to implement only the woman rights, and also all the woman rights is connected to the sustainable development goal. That's why I accept this invitation to be here and sharing what we have been doing in Central Africa and Southern Africa regions, as you mentioned, like Angola, Mozambique, Malawi, and Zambia. We have been working with the many young people as a hubs, and then we are here to share our knowledge and what we understand between the tokenism and youth voice. So for me, it's all. Let's see between the conversation what we can add more.
Thank you very much for that introduction. We're really excited to learn more about the social work programs that you do all across Africa. I mean, it's really encouraging and inspiring to see the community work that you've done across all those different countries. Lastly, and not to be outdone, we have Renchillina. Renchillina has different names, so I don't know, she'll let us know if you'd like to be called Joy or Renchillina. But Renchillina is a global citizenship advocate from the Philippines, and she's one of the founding members of iGoCitizen, which is a multicultural organization mostly present in Sri Lanka and Canada. It is committed to a mainstream active global citizenship education in school curricula with emphasis on the themes of peace building, social cohesion, equality, and respect for human rights. As the lead of communications and advocacy, she has represented their team and project as a youth member at various international conferences and fora on higher education and sustainable development goals, with the hope of inspiring genuine support and action from leaders and fellow youth. Professionally, she is a social researcher and a master's in sociology student at the University of Philippines, working on a research related to digital sociology of health and illness, migration, claims making, and labor relations and negotiations. Using competencies she acquired through her professional experiences and advocacy efforts, she aspires to contribute to the nuanced discussions and understanding of global issues, which is at the core of GCED. Thank you so much, Renchillina, for joining us today. Please tell us more about who you are and the work that you do. Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you very much for the kind words, Stacey. You can call me Chill for short. It's a very
Awesome.
long name, I understand. But yeah, you can call me
Great.
Chill. Um, Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to all of you. It's really a great pleasure to be part of this discussion with Divya and Manasia. It's very interesting for me to be part of this, to discuss this topic of what I think is usually avoided or sometimes treated as the elephant
Yes.
in the room, the topic of youth washing and tokenism. So I'm actually joining this panel as a youth member of what was mentioned, the iGoCitizen, which is an interdisciplinary and intercultural organization that we founded back in 2022. So most of our members are considered as youth in whatever definition you're looking at right now. So quickly, our goal is to mainstream SDG 4 with specific focus on target 4.7, specifically global citizenship education.
Yeah.
So that's the meaning of GCEID. So this is a framework that advocates basically for active engagement of everyone, because we believe that we share the same responsibilities in taking care of our world globally and locally. So we're mainly focused on advocating the global citizenship values of human rights, peace building, and youth action in universities in their curricula and school activities. So as mentioned, we started this in 2022, and we had our pilot implementation in the form of a hybrid workshop for the students at the University of Jaffna in partnership with University of Jaffna in Sri Lanka in partnership with Visions Global Empowerment, which is a community-based organization in Sri Lanka. So through this engagement, we're very lucky that it opened different opportunities from us to us to discuss global citizenship on a wider scale. So there are some interests, for example, in communities in Mexico, Pakistan, and the Philippines, where I came from. So we're also invited in different conferences, as mentioned, to discuss this. So I think that there are different challenges that we face, but I'm looking forward to discuss them later on in this panel. And I'm hoping that through our discussion today, we will be able to redefine what we mean by youth engagement and moving past the idea of mere representation, and that with the hope of course, moving toward the change that we want to see. So I'll stop there. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Chill. It's been nice to really hear more about how you're striving for youth inclusion and action in different universities where your organization is based. And I'm really looking forward to delving more into what that really means on the ground in our discussion today. To start us off, there's a really big question, the elephant in the room, as you'd put it, Chill, that we would like to look into as we start our discussion. And this question, I'm going to direct it to Divya to start us off. The question is, how has the representation and participation of youth, and this is directed to everyone. So as she speaks, just think about it and think about what you think that looks like in your different areas of work. So the question is, how is the representation and participation of youth in each of your countries progressed from the inception to now? So this inception is referring to the inception of the SDGs. We can start from 2015, but we can go at whichever point you feel youth began to be a voice that was heard in your different areas of work. You can go ahead. Thank you.
All right, sounds good, Stacey. Thank you. So in Nepal, about 20% of our population falls within the age bracket of 16 to 25, while a significant 40% of the age group is between 16 to 40 years old. So what this indicates is a noteworthy demographic shift in Nepal, making the emergence of a demographic dividend, particularly characterized by a youth bulge. And what this means is that there's a situation where the youth cohort constitutes the largest proportion of nation's population, obviously which presents both challenges and opportunities for countries' development trajectory. Back in 2000, maybe I will go back in 2008, which is when Nepal became a federal democratic republic from a Hindu monarchy. And this is when I think Nepal's youth participation was monumental in terms of carrying out campaigns, resistant movements, and demonstrations. So this people's movement that we had for 10 years witnessed impactful political activeness of youth for the first time in a very impressive way in Nepal. And so this historic integration of youth in politics reflects the potential and the intention of youth as being key agents of change in state building in our context. And we have a Youth Vision 2025, which is this concrete and special strategic work plan formulated with a far-sight approach to materialize the rights, aspirations, and needs of youth. And with this, I think Nepal has seen a significant shift in recent years, with increased youth participation in political processes and a notable rise in youth leadership. For instance, our 2022 elections that we had marked a milestone. It was a milestone for Nepal in terms of youth participation in politics and governance in Nepal, featuring numerous young leaders, such as our first female mayor and deputy mayor of Kathmandu city, as well as many newly elected members of parliament under the age of 45. And also the 2022 federal and provincial level elections saw an increase in youth participation with 31% of our total candidates in the youth category. So what this trend reflects is that broadly, there's an effort to include youth in decision-making and to create more of an inclusive and representative democracy in the country. However, one of the biggest challenges facing both Nepal and the global community is that youth voices are actually heard and valued in the policy-making process itself. So even though it has been acknowledged that youth people are seen as both like social and moral actors and are accepted as fully fledged democratic member of society, like meaningful participation and moving beyond this illusion of inclusion still remains a struggle. For instance, employability is a huge challenge in Nepal. And I think this mirrors the global trend where I think there's an ILO report that recently showed that youth face 3 times the unemployment rate of older adults. And I think between 2005 and 2020, like the share of youth not in education, employment, or training was highest in lower and low middle income countries. Likewise, I think there's also gender gap in labor market outcomes and political participation, which persists, I'm sure, not only in Nepal, but worldwide, and they increase with seniority. And like in 2022, for instance, women only made up less than 40% of the labor market and 27% of management level positions globally. And I think this is the same problem that Nepal is also facing. Same thing with women making only up to about 26% of MPs globally, and the percentage is much, much, much lower in Nepal, though increasing. So overall, I think all the progress has been made in terms of advancing youth representation and participation globally, as well as in Nepal. I think much work still needs to be done to bridge these gaps and remove barriers preventing young people from contributing meaningfully to social, economic, and environmental sustainability. So I think we can play a more meaningful role in SDG implementation, and we can bring in our spirit, innovation, creative thinking. So I think what this means is that young people that we see as torchbearers of future need to be engaged more meaningfully with the SDG agenda, but also as broader agents of change in Nepal and South Asia and globally, I'm sure.
Yeah. Definitely. There's a lot of things that are really echoing and screaming in what you've just said there. And one thing I'm noticing is that it's not like it's not youth tokenism, but we're not fully developed into meaningful inclusion. It's not so much somewhere in the middle there, just trying to scrape through and make it to meaningful youth inclusion. What I noticed also is that you spoke a lot about that there's actually a lot of progress being done, which is actually amazing. So as you have said all those things, we are given hope. There's a lot of hope that we're seeing, that it's not like we're starting from scratch, and we're actually going somewhere. So thank you for offering us a perspective from South Asia. And now we're just going to look down back in the South to hear more about how it is in the South and how we can bring these things all together. Another thing, as Manasia is going to give us the next thought on this discussion, we're also going to look at how she views the topic you've spoken about women, because she's also very big on women inclusion and women participation. So Manasia, as you offer us your response, please also shed some light on how women issues are in the South and also in the central parts of Africa. Thank you so much.
Yes, well done, Divya. It was great to hear from you and learn a little bit about Nepal. So I was speaking about the African contest and go through the Angolan contest as well. because as you know, I'm from Angola. I have properly understand to sharing about my country. So the whole African, as Divya said, even the whole world, we can see the youth representative in sustainable development goals. It's already growing a little bit. You know, we have been seeing many change. If we look to the implementation, we are almost 1 decade, you know, since the Sustainable Development Goal is started. So after 1 decade, what we have been seeing in Africa is like we can maybe like recognize easily many African countries have implemented the Sustainable Development Goal, focus on youth programs. We see a lot of youth programs to apply. Many African people have been applied. I can give an example between like yearly programs, you know, Young African Leadership Initiative is one of the program come from the US Embassy to implement in Africa. I got also this opportunity to get scholarship, and then it was in 2018 when I went to South Africa and I applied to do leadership course in civical leadership. And then a part of the programs we have like many forums in Africa at the Global Shapers. Each year we implemented Shape Africa. Last year, the Shape Africa happening in Pretoria, and we normally change each country per year to implement our summits. And then we also have seen many platforms as a UN implemented like a CNG to young people in many countries, not just in Africa, but around the world. However, there are some disparity among this country when we come up to see how these programs and platform, when we look between women participation as a young people, you know, it also gives us some highlights if we go through the cultural barrier and religions. We have been learning that in Africa, as a woman, we should focus only in domestic activity, you know, and then most of the time, this is something that we have been working on and change our mindset and to help women get to knowledge and exposed to vocational training. We have been also work at the Kuzunga. We have one project called Kuzunga in Luanda Hub, which the meaning of this project is to help young women and adults to get more information about financial education is a big issue. When we go to the informal market, we see there are a lot of women that work in informal market, but we want to see how they know how to manage the income that they get from the bank, like micro finance, and then how they manage to implement and also help their children to apply for educational system. But in Angola, our government has a lot of political projects, I can say projects or programs that help young people apply, not just for vocational training, but also get some instruments as a micro loans and to help them becoming entrepreneurial. This also connect to the Sustainable Development Goal. But I see it's not the end, as young people represent 61% of Angolan population, and then the woman only represent 51% of the total population. I don't know if Stacey get me either.
Yes, yes.
Hello? Yes. So there are many, I think there are long way to go through when we look between the number of young men between a young woman, and when we look the cultural barrier, political barrier, and educational system. I think we have to focus more in educational system to apply the sustainable development goal, the goal number 4, it must be aligned to the other general goals.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very much. Thank you so much, Manasia. We're seeing a lot of, if I quote you correctly, there is to some extent a level to which youth are being included through the various programs that are being rolled out in Africa. Thank you for just pointing out that there are efforts that people are trying to put in place. And like we're seeing from what Divya said in Manasia, there is a real gap between the youth inclusion and then also women inclusion. So we're seeing 2 dimensions here, all bringing us back to education as a key. So the themes that I'm getting here, capacity building and youth inclusion and women, those are the themes that are running through there. And we're seeing that we are still kind of in the middle there, and we're trying to find where we are so that we can move forward. Thank you for sharing with us. And to bring it all together, Chill, may you please share with us how it has been going, trying to bring youth to actually be action takers in advancing their youth inclusion. Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you, Stacey, for that. And it's wonderful to hear from Divya and Manisha as well. As for the Philippine settings, I would say that the youth participation has always been vibrant. Tracing it back in the time when the Philippines went under the leadership of a dictator, it's always the youth that is always in the forefront of different social and political movement. And I'd say that in terms of that political and social movement, the Filipino youth are also um, smart in using the current technologies that we have in voicing out and expressing their opinions online. So it may not be directly related to us, but we're still concerned into it and we say something about it. So hence, I would say that the Filipino youth has that social awareness to see the interconnectedness of the issues that we're facing. Of the political aspect, in the Philippines, we have this so-called Sangguniang Kabataan or SK. It's a community council that represent youth in barangay, which is the smallest unit of government in the Philippines. So we have that aspect in our political system. So in a way, youth are really encouraged to be part of the decision making in their smallest, in their communities. So however, though, the problem here is in terms of how is it effectively implemented is still a question because even though there's this aspect of our political system, it's not always that they get the enough funding to support their projects, for example, for their fellow youth and for health, community health projects. So that's one for the political aspect of it. And in terms of civic participation, I would say that nowadays there are many youth-led civic advocacy-driven organizations that are being established in different parts of the Philippines. So, for example, we have this organization, youth-led. It's called Youth-led in the metro, and now they're establishing different branches in different parts of the Philippines. So since Philippines is an archipelago, it's kind of difficult to reach out to different islands. But through these organizations and coalitions, we can they were able to create a network and later on kind of trickle down the project to the different areas, even the far-flung. So some of the activities that they're doing included are centered on SDGs. So we also have this organization called Youth Force 2020 or 2030. So this organization is centered on is advocating that by 2030 will be able to contribute meaningfully to the SDGs. So similar to the organization Youth Led, this has also different branches in different regions in the Philippines, and that encourage more engagement from different areas in the Philippines. Some of the advocacies are also on environmental concerns, which is a real concern in the Philippines, especially with the pollution and global warming that we're experiencing. It's during summers, it's really hot here, so there are youth coalitions that are focused on that area of advocacy. And then, interestingly, while hearing Divya and Manasia, I would say that there's a parallel in terms of youth participation in terms of election. So last year, 2 years ago, in 2022, we had our presidential and vice presidential election, wherein the youth actively engaged in voters' rights and voters' awareness campaigns. Some of them became active in doing door-to-door campaigning for candidates they believe is aligned to their advocacy for transparency and good governance. So yeah, so far in the Philippines, it has always been vibrant, and the youth are always been active in really voicing out their dissent in terms of like problem in governance and social issues. But at the same time, there's still some room of making it inclusive, that the youth in different are also represented. Areas in the Philippines are also represented, and then also in terms of support, in terms of fundings, like for example the one I mentioned about the Sangguniang Kabataan, or the unit of government for the youth, must be improved in terms of like support, in terms of funding. Yeah, so that's all for now. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chil, for just shedding a lot of light on the extent of youth inclusion in the Philippines. It's so exciting to know that there's a lot of vibrance in that area where you are. And I'd like to just find out, just to pose another question to you, if youth are at the center of planning these projects, or if it's adults who are planning and then they implement, just to shed some light on that.
Yeah, for the organizations that I mentioned a while ago, it's mostly the youth who facilitates the decision making and also doing the action towards those advocacy. But in terms of, for example, the one I mentioned about the political aspect of it, the Sangguniang Kabataan, it's mostly we're encouraging those who won that election, the youth who won that election, to initiate the conversation and do the decision making. However, though, in practice, we cannot, avoid like external factors influencing their decision making. So I would say that yes, there's certain extent of agency for them to make the decision, but at the same time, the contextual constraint that they are bounded by is still influencing their decisions for their localities.
Thank you. So I'm noticing that it seems like you guys are almost there, actually. I know there's a lot of work to be done, but just judging, like just seeing the different perspectives that you guys are offering, the Philippines is really on its way to achieving inclusivity in terms of youth participation. I'd like to pose a question to between Divya and Manasia. Any of you can go ahead and answer this. Whoever feels they would be most able to address it in their context. When you look at your context, comparing it to the Philippines, we've seen that in the Philippines, the inclusion is high. And we've seen also that in Nepal, inclusion is also high. In Angola, it's a bit slow, but we're getting there. I'd like to pose a question to both of you and ask that has a watered down version of inclusivity made youth in the global majority complacent and less willing to initiate change? So any one of you can go ahead and delve into that one.
Manasia, would you like? I could go for it if.
Okay.
Unless you had something, yeah, up to you.
Are you going, or you allow me to go through?
Either
Divya?
way.
Okay.
Yeah.
The watered down version of inclusivity in Angola and the whole African country in Central Africa, actually, where I'm working with the young people, I can see more limited access to education. I probably explain more about that. And economic opportunity is also low, and political participation persists in many African countries. This may lead to reduced willings between young African. You know, if you are not part of the political party, if you're not part of the any government interesting, it's very hard to get opportunity in many African countries. We can look to the RDC contest. They are having war between RDC and Rwanda. We see many young Africans have been struggling to find peaceful and meaningful time to spend to enjoying with the families, and also look up to our continent and see other opportunity to grow as a young people. So I see this is something that can be more achievable between African Union, and then also between the General Assembly at the UN should focus more in Africa. I can say African develop the overall contest, but also with the CPLP region, the country that only speak Portuguese. The language is another barrier when we talk about the inclusivity. If you don't speak English, French, you cannot most of the time apply for the international opportunity. I see many young people in Angola have been doing great job, but because of they don't know a little bit how to explain themselves in English or in French, they don't apply for many international opportunity. It may be give us some insights. It's not because we don't have knowledge to apply. It's not because we are not doing anything in our country or in our continent, but we have to maybe add in our educational system more language skills or vocational training. I learned English by myself, but it was like 3 years ago, I think so. But we normally use Portuguese to explain ourselves in daily activity in Angola. So most of the time, I have to work hard to express myself in the international platform as this final discussion. But this is our deal. We have to fight for our rights. We have to fight for our, how can I say, is a moment or better opportunity to go through, even with the fears, even with the fear, we have to say, look, we are here, we feel the same issue. The global sustainable development goal is for all the world, not just the US, European Union, but as an African, we also need to be part of that, because our country, they pay the national contribution, to be part of the UN platform, the African Union platform, but we don't feel inclusivity. We don't see, like, if you look at the number of African that apply for the UN General Assembly, if we look to the African Union summits, how many Angolan apply for these summits? Just few, I think we have to maybe rethinking how we schedule our summits, our General Assembly, to be more inclusive. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Yes, you said.
I think I'm done for now.
So, from the question that I had asked, it's not, what I'm seeing is not, it's not a matter of complacency. From what we're seeing, it's not complacency, more like barriers that are limiting the inclusivity. So it's more as if it's leaning towards tokenistic inclusion on the part of the people who are supposed to be putting in place these enablers to enable the youth to participate. So thank you for Manasia for offering that perspective, that it's not that youth don't want to participate, but I mean, I can't imagine participating when I can't speak the language. So those devices that enable the young people to participate is something that is lacking in Central and the South of Africa. Thank you for giving us that perspective. And Divya, please go ahead and shed some light on what you think on just what Manasia has also said. Thank you so much.
Sounds good. Firstly, I think, yes, we have come a long way since 2008, and also since we've moved from Millennial Development Goals to SDGs in 2015, that really actively started focusing on representation, inclusion, participation of youth, women, and other minority groups. But I think, having said this, Nepal's come a long way, but obviously there's still a lot to be done. And I think this watered down version of inclusivity, or like this tokenistic way of seeing youth participation and inclusion, has definitely contributed to a sense of complacency among Nepali youth. For instance, it's driven a mass emigration to foreign countries of young people in search for better opportunities. Like over 100,000 Nepali youth left country for employment and education purposes just last year alone, resulting in a significant brain drain and depletion of human capital essential for national development. And so this departure of, 100,000 students a year, coupled with 75% increase in outbound study in just last 8 years, underscores the level of hopelessness I feel that Nepali youth have in terms of the lack of desire to stay and contribute to country's development. I mean, this is not to say that the government's not making this a priority. I mean, the Nepal government has been emphasizing on strengthening our education system, for instance, but despite their commendable efforts, despite including allocation of 11% of our budget to education, our education system still remains plagued with structural deficiencies and quality issues. So there have been 12 reform cycles in the past 50 years in Nepal, but they've still failed to address these challenges, signaling the need to maybe move beyond just identification of problems and maybe toward effective implementation of what we've identified as problems and solutions. So for instance, like migration of labor from Nepal is primarily marked by a majority of young, unskilled workers, constituting over 54% of our total labor migration. These individuals represent the most susceptible group to displacement and its associated risks. And I mean, despite the potential benefit of remittances, which account to up to 25% of Nepal's GDP just last year, the loss of skilled and educated young people pose still a major challenge to our development efforts. And also, I think the departure of youth contribute to this demographic shift, where now older populations are bearing the burden of managing communities and agricultural activities. So I think this exodus highlights a systemic challenge in Nepal, which is that Nepali youth are ill-equipped for the demands of the modern workforce, which requires immediate action to enhance our youth employability. So in essence, I think, yes, to a large extent, and in many ways, I would say that the watered down version of inclusivity has made youth of Nepal somewhat complacent and maybe less willing to initiate change.
Thank you so much. So many intersections here, so many intersections. There are varying levels of youth inclusion, but we're seeing that a common thread that we're seeing is that there is a need to bridge those gaps of education and capacity building. Because if it's not the youth that are leaving, it's the youth that don't have the access to the education. So thank you for bringing a lot of light to what is lacking and what needs to be addressed in your particular setting in Nepal. Chil, I'm gonna come back to you and just ask about some of the challenges that you faced in your national and also regional context to meaningful youth inclusion in sustainable development actions? Because we know you've spoken a lot about how there's a lot of inclusion and the youth are really taking action in this field. But I know I'd like to find out if there's any of those that you could tell us about, and just a few notes about if you've done anything to address them. Thank you.
Thank you, Stacey. I would just like to comment quickly on the in terms of inclusivity of like representation of Filipinos in the global discussion. I would say that in the Philippines, more of like I'd say there are different opportunities. Like for me, based on my experience, I became part of a challenge, a student challenge, representing my country it's an international challenge, by the way. So I would say that there's an increasing involvement of Filipinos in different international opportunities for the youth. However, though, I would say that the problem I think is like the retention or like what's after once they're done with their participation in that specific event, then what will happen? I guess that's one of the concerns in terms of like the watered down version of inclusivity or the tokenistic, like, okay, we have like a Filipino in this program, but then what's the follow-up later on after that? So how can she, for example, implement what she learned in that program in her country and further, apply those knowledge into actions? So in terms of the challenges, I would say in the national context, first I think is socio-economic. Because of course, a lack of funding, first personal socioeconomics, uh, the youth programs usually tend to uh, ask for requirements for the youth. For example, for application for them to join specific programs, for them to join specific organization, there are certain bureaucracy in it that if, for example, you're not that equipped skill-wise or even social, economic or financial-wise, it might be difficult for you to join. So I think in terms of inclusivity, it's something that we need to rediscuss. Like, I don't understand that it's part of the metrics that we have to have the certain standards of the people who will come to the organization, but at the same time, kind of creating that barrier to um different sectors of youth that we have in our country to join the action because of their socioeconomic limitations. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then we also have like problems, it's more of like it's a social cultural thing. Like in the Philippines, maybe youth may feel disenfranchised or this are discouraged to act on something because we have this notion that it's more of cultural that if you're young, then you're expected to just be obedient to the authorities and to not question whatever is the status quo. So essentially, they expect the youth to have no opinions in a way. So it kind of like in the Taylor Swift lyrics, like they assume you know nothing when you're young, things like that. So it's like a cultural problem in the Philippines. So um youth, instead of voicing out their concerns, kind of try to self-censor themselves because they don't want to feel like they're disrespecting the authorities or the peoples who are older than them. So I think it might also be a factor why it's a challenge for the youth to mobilize and yeah, to be out there. And then in terms of socio-political, in terms of political aspect, like in the Philippines, it's aligned with the cultural aspect that I mentioned, that um, there's type of like censorship to what the youth should say online about their political views. So there's that kind of what do you call this? There's that type of like trying to silence their voices whenever we speak something about our advocacy, especially in terms of good governance, in terms of our advocacy in the environment, like stop exploiting our lands and things like that. But it's deemed as disrespectful to the government and being ungrateful in a way. So yeah, I guess those are the national and local challenges that we're facing that affects the inclusivity or the inclusive discussion in terms of sustainable development. Yeah, I hope that made sense. Thank you.
Thank you so much. It's really interesting. There's so many elements, and even in I'm surprised. Like, it seems as if, like, in the Philippines, things are really going well, but there are these barriers that are stopping things from really taking scale and moving forward. And lack of funding, I've noticed it's running across. It runs across so many things, and together with the cultural things. So thank you for bringing to light some of those challenges that you're facing. And I'm sure the rest of our panelists can relate in their different ways to some of these challenges that youth face in being inclusive. Manasia, may you please give us in 1 minute, please just offer us just one challenge that you feel resonates with youth inclusion. Just one of those. Thank you.
I would say the one is include youth representative in decision making is very important.
Okay.
And also these youth, they should not be just the youth who are politicians, you know. We should be more include like civil society. It's very important to listen because we don't see like all these young politicians. They represent the overall of the young people in our country and in our continent. We should listen to the civil society and also the political party young people. And most of the opportunity should be equal, you know, without barrier of where we come from, and also connected to we have our government politician called court corruption, you know. We should advocate to eliminate the corruption system, and also the conflict between many African countries and around the world. We see Palestine war, RDC war. It's also maybe can be a challenge to achieve the sustainable development goal, because we only have six more years to analyze how we achieve all of these SDGs during this time, you know, not just in 10 years, but other 60 years that we have left. So
thank you.
Let's be polite and positive that inclusion is the key word to achieve the sustainable development goal.
Yes, thank you so much. It's so important that youth be included in the decision-making process. And so we hope that that will be a central element, because it's also what Chill also mentioned, that it's controlled. I mean, youth need to be able to make those decisions by themselves. Divya, what do you think is one challenge that you think is the most significant? In 1 minute, please, may you just share that with us? Thank you.
Sounds good. I'll try to make it quick. I think what Manasia have mentioned, all these challenges, I think like those are some of the most pertinent challenges in Nepal and across South Asia too. And I think apart from, for instance, cultural norms and traditional values that discourage young women from pursuing certain careers, or structural barriers such as corruption and bureaucratic inefficiencies that further inhibit young people from effectively engaging in these processes. And I think some of the other things we've talked about are maybe youth unemployability or, you know, youth mobility abroad and so on. I think apart from these challenges, one of the things that I think Nepal is really struggling with is political leadership and governance, which now is predominantly led by individuals in their 60s and 70s. So young candidates often encounter challenges in their political career due to lack of opportunity, but also lack of guidance and mentorship. So for instance, restrictive age-related protocols in Nepal's legislation hinders youth participation in electoral processes. Eligibility requirement dictates that candidates must be at least 25 years old to contest for provincial and federal elections. while, let's say, participation in constitutional committees require individuals to be 45 years or older. So these bureaucratic hurdles and legal constraints impede youth representation, I think, and it's also what's preventing like fresh perspectives, ideas, and visions in policy discussions.
Definitely. And it's just reminding me of what Charles was talking about, youth inclusion and engagement being the center. From what you've all said, there's a theme that is really running across in terms of challenges, which is all kind of bringing everything together. I feel like we could write a book about this. But anyways, and it's political leadership. All of you have brought out how political leadership plays a huge role. And like one of you had stated, it's an elephant in the room. It's a big elephant in the room. And we're seeing that youth are not complacent. Youth are really not complacent. I'm seeing people want to participate, but there's this disillusionment I'm seeing in Nepal, in the Philippines, in Africa also, Central and Southern, that youth are facing this, it's as if they are there, but they aren't there. You know what I'm saying? And so it's really running across, and we're seeing that if, for instance, we had this magical wand, we are trying to figure out a solution, because we've spoken about so many things and different ways that we've included youth, the different ways that they have grown complacent due to this disillusionment and the discouragement from the political leadership, and the challenges that they are facing because of this, such as the funding challenges, the education barriers. There's so many. So there are a few key points that we're seeing here, that education is going to help us bridge this gap, but political leadership is one of the biggest ones that will help us make that happen. So from all of you, starting with Divya, please let us know, if you had a magic wand, what would you change? Just in 1 minute, tell us some words about what you would change based on everything we've spoken about today.
Sounds good. I think let me try to wrap this up. Like what I do, maybe 4 key areas that I think really ought to be addressed if we really want to move beyond illusion of inclusion to meaningful youth participation. One you've said is like political leadership, right? We need to facilitate the emergence of new generation of young leaders by providing more opportunities in meaningful roles within ministries, cabinets, and other political and bureaucratic governance structures, so that policies and programs are shaped meaningfully, including youth aspirations and voices. I think number 2 would be youth-centric policies. For instance, in Nepal, develop policies that prioritize empowerment and inclusion of youth, particularly in terms of promoting technological leadership and innovation. I think like what this involves would be, for instance, establishing tech hubs, training centers across Nepal to equip young people with skills and knowledge needed to thrive in a digital age. And I think third could be strengthening our entire knowledge ecosystem by depoliticizing it, and also fostering these networks of research and innovation, and promoting knowledge sharing networks and platform, and nurturing a vibrant knowledge ecosystem, so that we address both youth mobility but also the hopelessness and struggles of youth that have stayed back or have come back. And I think lastly, it would be for Nepal, the engagement of our Nepali diaspora, since a lot of people have left for numerous reasons. I think like this could mean tapping into the expertise, resources, and networks of Nepali diaspora abroad to support our local government, to facilitate meaningful investments in Nepal, because I think there's this sentimental attachment aspect of it, which might really work longer term. This entails, let's say, building bridges with the people abroad, but also leveraging their skills, their connections, encouraging them in more philanthropic initiatives, and fostering like these development projects with their direct engagement. So I think these 4 key areas is where I think I would want the world and Nepal government and all these CSOs and NGOs to focus on if we really wanted to move towards meaningful participation and engagement of youth. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I mean, it's really a team effort. Someone also mentioned before that it's not a one-person job. Everybody, I think it was Charles saying, everybody has a role to play. And it's equal. There's no, and I know Chu was also saying how young people are seen as not knowing anything when they get into spaces. But they are equally responsible and capable of initiating change. Chu, please also give us some key few points of, if you had a magic wand, what is it that you would change to? facilitate youth inclusion?
Thank you, Stacey. I think Divya created a great framework for it. But as for me, maybe to add on her points, I would say I would redefine what we really mean by youth participation, because I think we defined it like in surface level that okay, we have someone who is this years old, a youth member, to say something about it, and then after that, after the discussion, there's no follow up and there's no actual action that we listen but we don't take it into action. So I want to maybe redefine what do we mean by youth participation, and maybe the meaning may come from should come from the youth themselves on how we really want to express our ideas and how we want them to be actualized. And then in terms of political politics I agree with Divya that in the Philippines there should be more spaces for nowadays the creations of laws are just adults talking with each other, and there are no representation from the youth, where in fact the laws they're making are impacting us, and in the future will be the ones you know experiencing the effect of that laws. So it's important to have a youth perspective that is not tokenistic not in a tokenistic way. And then also I would say we need a very supportive environment, and this will come in the topic of funding. Listen to what we need, because sometimes we say it in conferences, we say it that we need funding, but
Yeah, you do.
it's just there. Like they acknowledge it, there's no really support, there's no actualization of the acknowledgement of the problem. So I think those are the things that I want to change. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And it is true that we need to be the ones who set the standard of what we want youth participation to look like. And we hope that the other players will start to facilitate those conversations about those different elements that need to be initiated. Thank you so much, Cho. And Manasia, please, may you just also add a few points in a minute of what you would do if you had a magic wand to shift the narrative of youth inclusion. Thank you so much. In a minute.
Wow. As an African queen, my nickname, as an African queen, if I would have the magical winds in Africa and around the world, I should use all this power that I have to prioritize genuine and meaningful youth inclusion at all the level of decision making. I think it is very crucial to develop process that includes young people in all the level, like administrative and so on. So this will involve change the educational system, promote entrepreneurship and job creation for young, and ensure the representative body in the government at the whole African country and around the world, not just go and sit there without action. More action and less tokenism. So among all of these, I should maybe emphasize the necessity to building philanthropic spirit, without empathy, without affection as a woman being, it should be very difficult to achieve sustainable development around the world. And yeah, let's use this power to change the world we want to see.
Thank you so much. I think, she's really summed it up, guys. Let's take back our power because we have it. So thank you so much, Manasia, for shedding some light on how we want genuine inclusion. And we are the ones through platforms like this who are going to facilitate that. Your discussion has been very insightful, and I'm glad that I've gotten the chance to hear different perspectives of the states of youth inclusion in different spaces. I think what we're learning here, I know for myself, is that education is at the center. If we were to make an egg, we would put education at the center and then put the different things that would help us to achieve what we want, which is youth inclusion, in the space of developing the SDGs. Thank you all for bringing in your different and various and insightful perspectives to help us to develop some different and diverse understanding of the topic that we are discussing. Now what we're going to do is to open up the discussion for questions. And in the meantime, if there's any closing remarks that any of you would like to give, please go ahead. But it's been so interesting. And I think I don't even know what to say because I've learned so much from all three of you, and including Charles's keynote speech. If there are any questions in the audience, please make sure that you just put them in the chat so that we can start to address those now. But for our speakers, does anyone have any last words as we wait for questions from the audience in the chat? You can go ahead. Just in a minute, you can just give us some last words of what you would like to say as we round up. Okay, anyone? I think it was amazing. I think it was amazing that we're all speechless, and everything that was said was really it was conclusive of what we want to achieve. We know that there's no one-size-fits-all answer, and it's not like this thing will be achieved now, today. Also, we know that we're left with 6 years, as Manasia also told us. So I hope that this discussion has encouraged you to continuously redefine what it means to include youth into the development of the SDGs. And we look forward to seeing more of the work that you're going to do in advancing youth inclusion. Thank you so much, Charles, for your comment. Charles said, congratulations on such an inspiring discussion. It's been so amazing to connect with all of you. And I look forward to, connecting with you more as I see you on LinkedIn. Cynthia is going to share some of your social media links in the chat. So if you'd like to follow any one of them, please go ahead and do that. They'll be in the chat. But that's the end of our discussion.